Welcome back to a Browsing History special, episode 2. We're outdoors here in the freezing cold. It's January, it's frosty. It ain't fun.
It's the special you need from the boys with special needs.
It's colder than a polar bear's prolapse, so we're not sure why we're here. But Upnor Castle's pretty sweet. We're gonna have some fun. Let's get to it. So what do you know about the Dutch, apart from clogs, windmills, and getting higher than a hawk's hymen?
I know they're fond of nutmeg.
Yeah?
Yeah, we had a fight in the Indies over nutmeg with them.
Well, here's the thing, right? Turns out that we actually had 2 big old wars with them. Actually, 3, the Anglo-Dutch wars, about trade. So you ain't wrong, bruv, on the nutmeg.
And we were just teaming up with them against the Spanish just before that. Then they're like, no, actually.
Yeah, actually, we don't like you anymore. We want them slaves and spices, not you, bruv.
They had small population compared to us, but really urbanised.
Yeah?
So they're like, in civilizations too,
Yeah.
if you play as the Dutch, you just get a bank.
Yeah.
You don't have to mine gold.
Nice.
It shows their like economic power at the time.
I think they also ended up having a better navy than us, which is absolutely haram, bruv.
Yeah, it's like China and America though.
Oh, okay.
At the minute, because they just produced hundreds of ships. They had like, I think 70 ships a year and we were doing about 10.
Yeah, but then our 10 ships were wham.
Yeah,
weren't
they're
they?
much bigger, better equipped, but
It's what it
you're
is,
going
isn't
to
it?
just come up and smash into them.
Turns out though, during the second Anglo-Dutch war, bruv, biggest invasion of the time on English soil, and probably the biggest upset the English Navy has ever suffered, happened right here in Medway at Upnor Castle, bruv.
So if you make the cost relative to nowadays, it would be as if our 2 main aircraft carriers were destroyed. It was about 7 billion worth of damage.
God damn.
Yeah.
There was one
Dang
chavvy.
Dutch.
There was one chavvy who was very famous throughout history, who actually recorded the whole thing, sort of like a live war.
Chronicler.
Yeah, like a live war correspondent, but he wrote it in a diary because they didn't have cameras back then.
Nice.
Old Samuel Pepys.
Hey.
Yeah, let's go meet him, bruv.
Check him out.
Here we are with our expert. We've got old Samuel Pepys in, the writer of the second most famous diary in history. I'm sorry to let you know that's the second most famous, mate.
Well, considering I didn't want anybody to read it anyway, I'll take that one.
So, Pepys, we heard that you were the first live war correspondent when it comes to the Medway raid.
Look, let's get something straight here. I wrote a diary of what I was experiencing without ever expecting anybody to read it. Most people don't actually know this, but my whole diary was written in code.
Oh,
So
cool.
it was secret code that wasn't expected to be read, mainly because I didn't want my wife to read what I was up to.
See, I heard
That makes sense after we translated it.
Yeah, I heard that. 9 years worth of your diary, 9 different birds you conquering during that, and not one of them was your wife.
No, my wife was 14 when I married her.
Yeah, so
Therefore, we won't dwell on that fact. But
well, at different times. It's not like you were at 22 out there in
an
the
apprenticeship back then, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
you
it.
mould them into what you need.
It's not like you were in the club at 22 and she was still studying for her GCSEs. It was a different time, wasn't it?
it was. Well, nobody took your wife to a school and taught her everything you needed. That's why I ended up coming down this way quite a lot. The girls down here seemed to know what they were doing. Yeah.
Old Samuel Pepys used to keep something similar to a swear jar, and every time you necked a bird more than twice, you used to have to stick a couple of pence in that.
I couldn't possibly answer your question to that. Although I will say I did have a nice cellar of port and cheese. Yes.
Talking of cellars and your abode, another story I like about your old Samuel Pepys, that you went to visit a friend of yours and you suffered a little bit of the loosey-goosey in the bumhole, you know what I mean? You had a bit of the shit squibs at one point.
You come off with an amazing dialect of East End language there. That's fantastic.
A bit of a squibs, and she didn't have no chamber pot, so it turned out you ended up dropping 2 ducats in the old chimney pot, right?
Well, for men that's acceptable.
Oh, okay.
I mean, most people don't actually really know this. Have you ever heard of a sootykin?
No.
Oh, a sootykin's a fantastic thing. They actually employed a boy years and years ago In Westminster, because women wore lint knickers and they would form those little, you know, those little balls that you get of lint in your belly button.
Yeah, yeah.
They'd get those down below and they would drop out and people would, like us, slip on them and fall over. There's a lot of accidents. Yeah, sootykins, it's a word of the day. But yes, we don't have flushing toilets and, you know, you get a bit tanked up on the old booze and port and everything, and hey, it just seemed funny to shit in a fire.
Fireplace will do.
Yeah.
Talking of the S word, that's one of my favourite quotes about the invasion of the Medway. One of the onlookers was heard to say, the devil must shit Dutchmen. And you can imagine the scenes, all the fired ships and all the cannonballs going off, all the smoke. It did look like hell, and Dutchmen were just pouring out of it.
You've got to remember that most boats are made of oak, and those oak boats are covered in ropes, and those ropes are covered in tar. So when you set fire to a boat, whether intentionally or not, it's usually got gunpowder as well. You have got a floating bomb.
Yeah.
And that tar burns, black smoke, they light up the sky. It's a free fireworks event for everybody around. So that's the biggest problem, that it draws everybody out, but when they're in the middle of the river, there's nothing you can do about it. No fire extinguishers, nothing at all.
So let's go learn more about the Dutch raid over at Upnor Castle. Let's down these pints, let's finish up. Let's go, chin chin lads.
Ah, chin chin.
Finally inside Upnor Castle, we've got Samuel Pepys himself, the site of the most shameful defeat in British naval history. And you managed to watch the whole thing, didn't you?
I did, yes. When I heard that there was something going on, obviously for my book,
Write that down, write that down!
I would often jump in the carriage and make my way to wherever the action was happening as quickly as possible, and came down here by carriage. Most children probably think I came down on a motorbike or things like that, but no, unfortunately it was a carriage, very slow ride, but got here just in time to see our ships being towed away.
Damn, so Grand Theft Navy going on over there.
Very much so. I mean, not many people know that there was actually a chain across the river that was stretched from one side to the other, and but the Dutch actually broke through that. But you say Grand Theft Navy or whatever you want to call it, yeah, I mean, there's nobody jumping off of the edge and respawning anybody else. It's just it's one of those things, yes. I understand about your modern games and stuff like that, yes.
So we ended up actually blowing up a load of our own ships to try and stop them getting through the chain, right?
I'm afraid so. They'd already broke through the chain at this point, come down, stole the ships, started to tow them off. And with any kind of navy problems, the English always come up with the best solutions, which is to set fire to your own ships and push them in front of thus problem.
So what you're saying is Dutch raid was actually a bit of an inside job.
Well, as we know later on, when it comes down to the plague and the Great Fire of London, we do know that there is not just one person to blame, there's multiple people. We don't know if it was the Dutch, the Spanish, even King Charles II. So just in case you were wondering what soldiers were doing about the barracks when, you know, nothing was happening, more often than not, they were living the lives that most of us want to live today, which is basically doing absolutely bugger all. You'll be sitting around eating if your rations supplied, drinking, which definitely your rations supplied, and gaming. So, but there's no slot machines here.
So say no PlayStation. What's this?
No, I'm afraid not. No, those betting shops. But you would be taking each other's wages.
Nice.
So you can expect to lose friends very quickly if you get someone's monthly wages. Then you can go down to swapping cheese and drink and everything else. But that is predominantly what soldiers in a fort on a castle like this would be doing, waiting for something to happen. And then when it did happen, like the chain broke up the river, that's when they suddenly realised that maybe they should have checked the guns and checked they had enough gunpowder and checked if they had enough soldiers, because by that time it's too late. They are no defence.
Well, they say gambling's a sin, and it really messed us up when it came to the Dutch raid then.
Well, No one's going to check on you if you're doing it, but you're not going to start using your hard-earned wages to throw at the enemy if you haven't got any gunpowder or cannonballs.
No use throwing cheese at them either. They're Dutch, aren't they? They've got plenty of that.
You're talking to the right person about cheese. I don't know if you know this, but I did bury my favourite cheese in my back garden, in my house. I did indeed, yes. It's the one thing that most people know about from my diary is that Samuel Pepys buried his favourite cheese in his garden when the Great Fire of London took off.
Just in case.
Yeah, like, I can't tell you if I went back to it, because I can't remember where I buried it. Never mind.
Buried plenty of sausage as well, I heard.
Well.
Did they actually get down to the castle itself, the Dutch?
Yes, because the boats were always kept in the river down by off at Chatham Docks. Chatham Docks has always been there since the early sort of 1600s, if not before. This has always been where we keep all our ships of the English Navy here. Not at Portsmouth, that came later. They were always here.
Represent. I've always said, like, the English Empire, if Mongolia can have themselves, I think I said this in the last episode, right? If Mongolia can have a 40-foot statue to the biggest rapist in Asian history, sometimes maybe we can be a little bit proud of the British Empire. And Medway was a big heart of the British Empire.
Pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
A bunch of boats take over the world.
That's all you need, bruv. Bunch of boats and some big bollocks.
Yeah. Medway's a good, it's like shallow at certain points, so you have to know it and know the tides to get ships out as well. So when they took the flagship, they had to like lean it right over like a canoe, get the gunnels in the water to get it out.
Like a little lowrider.
Yeah. Tokyo drifting all the way down the Medway.
So this castle itself actually saw some action on the day then?
This castle has always been a storage for gunpowder, but it's always been undergunned. There's never been enough guns here to actually commit to a big battle. So I would imagine a lot of the soldiers that were here would have been hiding below the battlements, being fired upon. If you went out there today, you would probably find a lot of cannonballs in the river. But if you want to go wading in the mud, that's up to you.
Yeah, as soon as the chain snapped, I guess it was panic mode in here. Yeah. Just don't know how to work the guns.
Throwing handfuls of gunpowder is not a good idea. Yeah.
So is this the sort of equipment they would have used on the day?
Yes, this is pretty standard equipment that all English Navy would have on board boat and in a place like this. You have various tools that are needed to fire a cannon, okay? This one up here, okay, is for putting the gunpowder down the barrel. And don't forget, when you're doing this, you're doing it under duress when people are firing at you. So this one here is a gunpowder scoop. Then you would use a locker to pad it down, okay, push the gunpowder down. You take your cannonball, always very important to actually get the right size cannonball, because if you don't, things could blow up in your face. Then what you do is you usually put some wadding down, okay, maybe a bit of clothing, bit of straw works quite well. You push that down, again with the rod. And then what you need to do is then get your little firing mechanism ready on top of the gun, and then just light it with a bit of a touch paper, a little wick, and away it will go. I say that, I've never actually fired a cannon in my life, but that's how I'm told it was done when I read the instruction manual. This whirly one here is for actually making sure that you get all of the debris outside, so you would give it a bit of a, I think it's called a squirmy router, something like that, I'm not too sure. But anyway, they're the tools you need, and you'd have to be trained while being fired upon. So if you can imagine, in a time of panic, you're being attacked from outside by all these ships. Coming down these stairs in a blind panic, it would seem it would be a very good idea just to sit on the banister and go all the way down like a slide.
Yeah.
But with it being lead, I would imagine that would cause quite a lot of problem to your undercarriage.
Little bit of poisoning going on then.
Yeah, they're all poisoned anyway, who cares?
Down this spooky corridor, this is where they stored all the gunpowder then?
This is a gunpowder store in the Undercroft. Believe it or not, even though you're storing gunpowder here, you can always have a fire because it's quite damp and warm.
Nice.
Well, cold. But you have your fire in there to keep you warm, but you obviously don't want it anywhere near the gunpowder because this is the place that you send the gunpowder upstairs. If you look down here as we walk down, it would have been very dimly lit all the time, lime washed, and the windows are incredibly narrow, very small, and the walls are about 5 to 6 feet thick. So anything firing at the castle is going to be well protected from cannonballs. There might be the odd stray cannonball that comes in here, but it's not going to cause any real damage because gunpowder doesn't do anything until you set fire to it. So if you think about it, if gunpowder ever did blow up in here, it's the whole castle that goes up.
Yeah.
Damn, this
Falls into the river.
Yeah, this is the spot to hit.
Yeah, well, you've got a great hole to jump out into the river and protect yourself, I would imagine.
So we've got this beautiful old building still standing here in Medway. You can see all like the gun portholes still rocking on the windows, so it's still got its lovely classic look. And all these gunpowder barrels stored on the sides are actually used for seats. They would have been dragged up here with this pulley system there, but they ain't got explosives anymore, have they? They're sort of used for ceremonies and holding weddings in this beautiful, gorgeous room.
Would you be happy to come to a wedding where you were sitting on a barrel of gunpowder?
I'd think it's pretty awesome, but I think the missus might have a bit of a problem with it.
So this actual castle, the main bit we're standing in now, is actually an Elizabethan castle.
Nice.
Okay, so we're talking about a time when it's built because we're actually a little bit worried about the Spanish coming up and seeking retribution for good old Sir Francis Drake. Now this castle probably would have been as cold as it is today. You don't have fires in rooms like this.
Yeah, there's a lack of chimneys about, isn't there?
There's a lack of chimneys, but there's also a lot of gunpowder.
Oh yeah, of course.
Gunpowder and fire doesn't tend to go very well.
Nah, not if you want to keep the building standing.
Now that said, I don't know if you actually know this, but gunpowder doesn't actually explode.
No?
It's when you compress it, isn't it?
It's when you compress it and you stop it. It's the gas expansion.
Ah.
So when gunpowder is stored in barrels like this, you should look at the castle as the explosive part. Because when you store things up like this, if one starts going, the rest will go. They're compressed in barrels, but that's to keep them dry. Now, if you could imagine this room with cannons facing out into the river, it's going to be a very cloudy, smoky, sulphurous room when they start firing things off. But you always make sure that the gunpowder's never near the gun. Always bring the gunpowder to the gun.
Yeah, you don't want them hanging out
Yeah, there's
together.
a road locally called Powder Monkey Road or Powder Monkey Alley.
You can't call them that anymore. They're not. You can't.
There was just dudes. It's just guys.
Oh, just guys. Oh, okay.
Usually young lads.
Oh,
So
okay.
keep 'em-
Okay. My
They
bad.
keep
My
a load
bad.
of powder at one place, and then think about that shovel we saw. How much you need per shot?
Yeah,
They'd
yeah.
be running all day, running it up and down.
God
Yeah.
damn.
That's why
And
you use
filthy.
children.
Yeah.
Children are the powder monkeys. Powder monkeys because they're running around here, there and everywhere. If you've got 4 or 5 guns in a room and everybody's shouting for more powder, it's that little monkey that's running around backwards and forwards, completely covered in sulphur and black charcoal, the main components that you use to make gunpowder.
So after the raid, the Dutch were quite honourable and didn't do any pillaging or anything, right? And it's actually these filthy bastards who ended up pillaging the old Medway towns themselves.
Well, I think you've always got to remember that being in the English Navy, or the Royal Navy, is never very well paid. There's no guarantees that you will get your money. So if there's a bit of free loot about, then why not?
Fair play.
Especially if you gambled your wages.
Yes.
Especially if you gamble your wages. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that if nobody's looking, why not break into someone's house and then just blame the Dutch?
Yeah.
Well, we love a little tinfoil hat over at Browns in History, and didn't you say something about it actually being a bit of a revenge attack?
Yeah, so shilling, I think it's called. Shelling? Dutch words confuse me. But the Bishop of Minster was sponsored to go over to Shilling, this town in Holland, and we were lighting bonfires over here in support because he was burning the village down.
Yeah.
So they come over here and didn't act that way, as Pete
nice.
said in his diary.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's kind of like a revenge attack. It was very close to the time. And there,
You've read my diary.
oh,
I
I think quite a few people have now.
Oh.
But yeah, there's a St James's Church on Grain, Isle of Grain. That you can still see the damage that was repaired by the Dutch. They tried to break into the church. They were like, well, we're good Christians. So their commander sent them back to repair the door.
Nice.
And you can still see the repair job on St James's Church in Grain.
They do a decent job.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So if you want your own living history experience, checking out this beautiful castle down here, we've got the view of the same direction the Dutch would have come from. Come down to Upnor Castle, check it out. Old Samuel Pepys is usually here once a year, giving some workshops. And dude, we want to thank you so much for coming down.
I won't shake your hand just in case you have the plague.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hear it's rife in London.
Fair play, fair
You
play.
don't look very clean.